This is a lot of extremely technical information about how rivers work. And we're talking a lot about stormwater, but a stormwater is a water channel that conveys water and sediment too. And so I'm going to talk a lot about sediment transport in a stream system and the shapes that streams make for themselves. If you understand this, then water harvesting is very easy because you're dealing with a tiny system that you can affect with a hand shovel or moving one rock. But the same exact principles apply as on the Gila River. So a river has three jobs. It transports water, it dissipates energy, and it takes the mountains to the sea. It's that last thing that gets everybody hung up, okay? And so I'm going to focus a lot on sediment, erosion, transport, and deposition. If you understand the conditions that cause the sediment to be eroded, transported, and deposited, then you will master water harvesting. And it's really not that hard. I don't expect you to understand everything, but get a gestalt of what's going on, okay? This is a river cross-section. There's a 2-to-1 vertical exaggeration. This form was made by the river. The river knows what it needs to do, and if you pay attention to what it's been doing, then it's like you're going to get an A. How do you get, what's the best way to get an A in class? It's to sit behind the smartest girl and copy her paper. In this case, the smartest girl is Mother Nature. And so let's pay attention to what Mother Nature put down and copy that. You're going to get an A. Okay, so what we've got is, I'm going to talk a lot about bank full stage and the bank full channel. And in a dryland stream, you might not have any water when you're there. There might be base flow, but the bank full channel, that's the heartbeat of a system, and it might have one heartbeat a year. It might have one heartbeat every 2 years. If you can learn to read the landscape and point to the point on the bank that the water gets up to during its periodic pulse, then it's just so much easier. You don't have to fight things. You'll be working with a natural process and fostering it. It's the lazy man's way. This is a longitudinal profile, a graph of how the stream drops as it goes downstream. Note, this is 100-to-1 vertical exaggeration, just to make a point. And there's where the water surface is steep. Okay, we have a steep water surface. That's a riffle. When the bed drops off very steeply, that's the run. Then you have a pool, and a glide is, if you're walking down a stream, walking in the middle of the water, you go into a pool, you're still going downstream, but you're climbing uphill to get downstream, that's the glide. You run into the pool and glide out. So it's a complex and very nuanced 3D shape, and we talk about it in 3 2D diagrams. There's the bird's eye view of the meanders. There's the cross-section showing the banks. And then there's the graph of the drop-off as you go downstream. I'm not going to do very much math, but imagine you're pouring iced tea out of a pitcher, and the amount of tea that the amount of tea that passes through, how do you get the pointer to go?
It doesn't work on the television.
Okay. The amount of tea that goes through there is the same amount rate as it goes through there. But as the tea speeds up and accelerates, the stream becomes narrow. This is the continuity equation. And it's fascinating for me to watch as the water seemingly shrinks as it speeds up. And the sediment transport changes when it does that. Here are 2 of the 3 two-dimensional views. We have the bird's eye view coordinated with the longitudinal profile, showing that pools tend to be on bends, riffles tend to be on straight sections. This is all based on physics, right? But the equations are too complex. They have too many changing variables for us to solve this in the office. But the river is solving it all the time. And it arrives at a stable form. And if we use that stable form as an analog model, then we're going to know about the right size and shape to copy shapes that are going to be stable, especially once they're covered up with vegetation. So this guy is huge. Dave Rosgen, he's taught thousands of people how rivers really work. And unless you understand the rules of the river, you're going to fail, because the river is going to work at undoing what you did. Okay? If you go in and make an alteration, the river is going to respond to that, and you better know what response you're going to get. And so he's a larger-than-life character with a giant ego, but he also has a giant amount of accomplishment. And he's kind of a coarse character, and he likes to say, if you don't know bankful, you don't know shit. And he's right. So let's talk about bankful. Okay? This stream is at base flow, but once every year or two, it kicks up for a moment high enough to be at bank full. If there's a flood, that's an overbank event. When you hear some news announcer say, "Oh my gosh, it's a flood," well, golly, floods have a flood frequency. They've been happening ever since there's been water on planet Earth. So we don't need to freak out about it. we need to not build our stuff where it's going to flood, and then it'll never get flooded. How easy is that? My gosh. Anyway, so then the floodplain starts at bank full, and it goes out until the slope goes up again. The floodplain is not like this vast plains in your imagination in some novel. The floodplain might only be 2 feet wide. But it's a feature that you can walk out and identify. Made by the river over time. So, sediment transport is something that a river does. So, the more water is flowing, the higher rate of transport of sediment, but also flood frequency goes down because a 100-year flood happens once in 100 years, no matter what an innumerate person believes. Okay? By definition, we don't have 10 100-year floods. Statistically, it's going to happen once. But see, the annual flood happens once a year. And so in a 100-year period, there are 100 one-year floods, but only one 100-year flood. And it is the 100 one-year floods that move the most sediment, that operate on a cycle of vegetation growth. And it is the 100 one-year floods that dominate the shape of the system. Yes, in your design, you need to accommodate the 100-year flood. But unless you accommodate the one-year flood, you're going to mess up sediment transport, your system's going to be unstable, and it's going to fail. It's going to fail unless you understand the pulse of the arroyo. Okay, now this is a graph. A very famous hydrologist went all over the desert Southwest and measured and identified the bankful features in hundreds of streams and graphed them. And although there is natural variability, soil type, this, that, and the other thing, he categorized it into regions. These are called regional curves. This is a graph of bankful cross-sectional area as a function of watershed area. If you are having trouble reading the landscape, or if your stream doesn't have any stable features and you need to do a project anyway, if you say, okay, I've got a 10 square mile watershed in, some part of Arizona, then you're going to know how many square feet should bankful cross-sectional area be. Don't understand all of this, but understand that this is not an office. This isn't really so much an office procedure. You need to go out there, find it on the ground. Okay, there's also a meander wavelength, if you will. The bird's eye view of meander patterns. The wavelength is distance between crests. It's not really a wave. It's a pattern that it happens all over the world. I don't care where you are. There's the central tendency of rivers is to meander. If you straighten them, the very first thing the river's going to do next time it has a bankful event is it's going to work to undo your straightening. So why initiate a permanent make-work job of fighting Mother Nature? Because when you run out of dollars or diesel or are dead, the river is going to fix itself to be how it wants. Why not start by operating in congruence with this system? So there's channel bottom, base flow, there's the bank full event. If you put 5 gallons more water in this river, it starts to flood on the floodplain. I'm answering your question. Okay? It's the hardest question to answer. During a runoff event, not just water, but everything else is going downstream. Okay? There's boulders, cobbles, gravel, sand, silt, clay, organic material, plastic bags, and everything else. And it gets parked. It gets exquisitely sorted by size and put exactly where it needs to be by the stream for free. This is a meander happening in an unstable system that doesn't have willows. It has cattle grazing, and it was a site of a project. However, observe the process. The outside of the bend is where shear stress is higher and you have bank erosion. Erosion is a good thing. It's a necessary thing. We're never going to stop it. We need to learn how to work with it and utilize it for our benefit. What's happening on the inside of the bend is where particles tend to drop out. And this stream has coarse gravel coming down the stream during a runoff event. And the bank full is a little bit above that. I don't expect you to be able to go out and identify bank full after this, but I want you to know that it's a real thing, and unless we understand it, we should lay off of doing something, because the probability that what you're going to do, the probability that it's going to help is minuscule. Sediment transport, and I believe this is for a 3-foot deep channel. What I want you to know is a particle of a certain size is going to sit there on the bed of the stream, and it's not going to move until there's enough force on it to move it, right? And actually, it's the deeper water is, the more pressure there is. And sediment transport is a function of pressure and velocity. That's what exerts force on a particle. And so the smallest sand grains move first, and as the water gets deeper and faster, larger and larger particles start moving, each in turn. Critical shear stress is the stress required to move a particle in a stream bed. And it's got the density of water, the depth, and the slope in it. You don't need to understand the formula, but just understand the concept. Okay? This was a flash flood in the desert, and those particles those are cobbles that are 3 feet high in a tree. There's a very powerful event, and those particles were saltating. They were bouncing like this, 3 feet high during a giant storm, and they collected there. You got to understand the processes. Just get a gestalt of all this. Okay, so I'm comparing a gully with no floodplain and a channel with a floodplain. So here's bank full, storm, something that happens every 1 or 2 years, if you're lucky and it rains. Okay? Now, a super important thing is what a floodplain does. If you have a gully with no floodplain and you have a storm that's twice as big as the heartbeat of the arroyo, if you have no floodplain, look at what happens to your depth. Look at what happens to your shear stress, pressure on the bed and banks. If you have a floodplain, then this is an area where you have temporary in-channel storage, where the shear stress is not going to be enough to cause erosion, and where sediment that's banging around can eddy out onto the floodplain. If you have a floodplain in your channel, it makes a world of difference. Here's a particle that eddied out during a large storm. I'm talking about that boulder. Okay, so I was fortunate enough to get to co-author a book on stream channel process with Bill Zedike, who is our local New Mexico, watershed restoration expert. And he helped me and a handful of other people get clued in to how things work and helped us start businesses. And induced meandering is a clever idea he came up with to do a little bit of work here and there to help a river in its natural career of self-healing. And if we can put the wiggle back in an incised system, look at what happens to the path length between point A and point B. If there's some wiggle, then these 2 points, the distance between them increases, the velocity decreases, the size particle that they can move decreases. If you alternate the force of erosion from this bank to that bank and back again, the energy of the river erodes a bank and it erodes the other bank. Every time there's a hard flood, the river is in a little bit better shape for free. So let's be smart, cheap, and lazy all at the same time. Let's help the river in its natural career of self-healing. So this is in Burros Cienega, in the Silver City area. This is in 2005. We dug, this is the same thing you saw at Sand Hill Arroyo, except this is with locally cut juniper posts. I dug a trench with a backhoe, put the posts in the trench, And the top of the posts, you know, they're like this, and they're about that far apart, just like the rectangular 4x4s we saw. Okay, so that's day of construction, 05. There's 06. You can see that the row of posts have collected flood debris. There's 07. They've collected more debris and a little bit of sediment. It still has some bypass flow in this place. There's 2010. Natural recruitment of willows occurred. See, on the day of construction, it was a dry channel. I'm not going to waste time trying to plant willows. I know that native vegetation is eventually going to take over that site. I went back in, September, the beginning of this month, 20 years later. This site is getting better and better and better, all by itself, without any additional human input, because we're helping the river in its natural career of self-healing. These floods can be extremely powerful. Don't try to block them. If you can somehow figure out a clever way to set the stage so that natural processes will regain dominance, it'll fix itself. It will fix itself. You have to remove the root cause of degradation, and that can be a political football. This is the new Highway 90 bridge in Silver City. It's brand new. It was built in 2016, okay? There's nothing wrong with the old bridge except poor surface water management, and water trickled into the concrete and rusted the rebar, and the bridge had a built-in self-destruct mechanism because they didn't manage stormwater. So the contractor put our creek in 2 culverts for 2 years. And we got the contract to dig that all out and reconstruct the stream channel, which we did. And there's a bedrock outcropping on this side. I paired it with a large boulder vein on that side to increase shear stress on the channel bottom. We planted willows. The boulder structure on the left is in opposition to the bedrock on the right to focus high shear stress in the center of the channel so that big floods will dig a big pool that's habitat, an energy dissipator, and a place to go. You can manage shear stress. If you want the channel to dig a hole, it can dig a hole. If you want to erode a bank, it can erode a bank. The opposite bank with lower shear stress is where particles will drop out. And as this bank erodes, the low bank chases it. The width stays the same. That's the characteristic width. That's bank full width. You have bank full stage. You have bank full width. The river will tell you. You can walk and you can identify and you can point to it. You can measure it and you can copy it. You can use it as an analog model. You don't need to even understand these equations. You can just cruise on down to the arroyo, identify bank full stage, eyeball it, and start building. I mean, that's what we do now. It's cheating. You know, I'm just copying Mother Nature. There's our willows. The old bridge had cottonwood trees that towered over the bridge. I don't have a picture. There's cottonwood trees we pole planted, and they're almost up to the height of the bridge now. I want to see towering cottonwood trees over the bridge again. Okay, downstream from there, the sewer line went under our creek, and a big flood tore it out, and like 11 million gallons of raw sewage went into the creek. The city fixed it. It was some kind of an NMED thing with Dave Menzie. Stream Dynamics got the contract. I forget which program it was. My mind doesn't work that way. But anyway, we did, I think this was 60 grand. Okay, so, but I'll show you what we did. So we had a gully, which was this channel. And according to, this channel didn't have a floodplain, okay? I needed to protect the sewer. It was very important for environmental reasons to not let it release the brown trout, okay? So what we did is we dug out floodplain. So here's the old channel. Here's the constructed channel reach. I dug it out so it had bankful width and bankful depth so I could reduce shear stress because I didn't want my work to get torn out. So here's before. Those are Siberian elm trees. We took out a lot of non-native trees. There's the sewer line, and this is downstream. And I've already excavated to create a floodplain. You don't normally do this, it's too expensive, but we had to make darn sure that the sewer line didn't get exposed again, as it had several times in the past. So this is a Roskin cross vein after construction, and we're planting 175 native plants. You'll observe on this is a U-shaped feature. This is the downstream side. I dug holes on the back side. I knew those were going to fill in with sediment, but they were going to fill in with water and sediment, so I created a temporary water harvesting feature on both sides of my structure that would irrigate our new vegetation. So this was an early flood. So those are the bank rocks. They're set to bank full. This is going to fill in with sediment. Can you please play that video, Arroyo San Vicente flash flood? Second one. Sorry, I told you wrong. Turn up the sound to max. Start it over again if you have to, because it's really cool. If it will. There it is. There it is.
I'm working on it. Hang on. Prepare, everybody.
Okay.
Pull your earplugs. Let's see. Let's see.
That was a flash flood.
Look at that tin can. There's the tin can. That's got a Zuni bowl feature. Right now the flash flood is slowed down as it's filling in that plunge pool. We built a natural feature.
Doing water harvesting basins. Both sides. That tire was seen several floods ago. The cottonwood tree we planted has grown over a foot.
That's really
Wow.
cool.
How did you know that was coming? Would you sit there for days or what?
I live there. I watched a storm hit town immediately. And that's the second flash flood I've seen there. I rushed on down to the creek. I got there just barely in time. In my life, I've been there 3 times when a flash flood happened. One time, I was at the home arroyo with my dog, and my dog was sleeping. And I saw a flash flood, and I was going to just let it get my... flash floods don't happen like you probably think. They come on at walking speed initially because it has to soak into the ground before it will support surface flow. It's rare to have a flash flood that you can't outrun or even outwalk. Okay? I was hoping that it would get my dog wet and I could laugh at my dog, but she heard it and got up in time. Okay, so then let's go back. So June 25, 2014. On August 25, 2014 was that flash flood. 2 months after construction. That wasn't a very big flood. It was a sub-bankful event. In the last 11 years, there's been some really kick-ass floods. But only one of my rocks moved, and the thing is still there today. It's going to be there for a long time.
Where was the water when you were doing construction? Is this a dry creek bed?
It's a dry creek bed.
Okay.
Yeah. There's different challenges. It's more fun to work in the wet. If you have base flow, you have water, and you can find aggregates and muck, and you can transplant things. You can put the rock, and you can stuff good muck behind it and tighten things up. It's in a lot of ways, it's a lot easier to work at base flow in a stream. You can adjust your rocks perfectly until the pour overs are working. Okay, so that's the next day. That's the day after the storm, and you can see that the water harvesting basins are already filling in with sediment. And then that's the next year. If you tried to take this picture right now, it would just be a wall of green because willows and cottonwoods and native vegetation, we removed this non-native Siberian elm, and there's a short reach of our creek that it's replete with the native vegetation for that site. It's all about managing shear stress. The bank rock is set at exactly bank full. You want large storms to go over your project and spread out. If you ever see anybody who builds a stream restoration feature and anything sticks up higher than bank full, then it's going to put too much shear stress on the channel bottom, and that thing is going to get removed by the river. If you get reasonably close to bank full dimensions, the river is going to love your structure. Okay, here's a water harvesting. How are we on time? We were at...
It's 10:30.
This is Silver City, New Mexico, where we have...
You have an hour and a half.
Great. And ask me a bunch of questions. This is weeks and weeks worth of knowledge and study kind of crammed into one presentation. Here's a natural watershed that goes into an arroyo, and the stormwater runoff from the Guadalupe Montessori School plus that arroyo is causing a huge stormwater problem and could potentially flood and access this neighborhood and flood a lot of people's houses. The watershed is 26 hectares, so that was 26 times 2.5. Okay, it's like they're 60 or 70 acres watershed. This is the direction that all the stormwater is going. I use red arrows for dangerous bad flows. The entire school's parking lot and playground goes down the driveway, and they had to fix this after every storm so that parents in the school bus could go to the parking lot. So I went to school early in the morning. I was the first person there, and I stood off to the side, and I watched until every single person had come and everybody was in school, and I watched exactly how many people came, how they drove, what vehicles came, and this and that. I came back before the bell rang in the afternoon, and I patiently watched until everybody was gone. And I thought about this, and I thought, how can this area be reconfigured so that it accommodates every single use I can see they need, and add water harvesting to that? So this is the long and thoughtful observation principle. I came up with this plan in which a driveway was converted into a green space near where the little kids play. And I have pull-through parking, and I accommodated every single thing I knew they needed. Their board approved my plan. And so you're looking at what I did for $10,000 before inflation kicked in, okay? So, day of construction, my camera is on a tripod. I reconfigured the entire parking lot and created all kinds of microtopography and basins. The runoff from the playground, a very compacted site, went to a sediment cleanout basin. Various other basins around where we planted trees, which eventually grew up and became shade trees. Then that's a rock rundown. The only place you need to put rocks in a water harvesting project is on the run, on the steep downhill place. Don't put rocks in there. You're not protecting anything. That's a depositional zone. Don't put rocks all around in there. that's not going to really erode. You need to know what is going to erode and parsimoniously do good work just in those areas. Otherwise, somebody who understands water flow will scoff at your work. Okay? So this was a driveway. Now it's a series of overflowing mulched basins that works kind of like this. Those basins fill up and they overflow one to the next. And then it goes across the driveway and not down the driveway. This is a rolling dip road drain. I'm going to get into dirt road drainage later. This is all of a piece. We're going across the driveway, not down the driveway. And that bump, even a Prius can negotiate without bottoming out. Please play the next video.
You got it.
With sound. It rained really hard. This was the largest storm in recorded history in Silver City. It happened 2 weeks after construction. Everything's full of water, but I'm keeping the shear stress where it needs to go. Now remember that large arroyo? Okay, we're managing, there's a rock rundown from the parking lot. Instead of having the water go down the steep driveway, and then it goes across the driveway instead of down the driveway. It's going into the arroyo over there, which has a huge amount of water, as you'll see. Then over to the left, we're managing the runoff from the building. There's another rolling dip going to another basin that sheet flows onto the grass. And now we're getting down towards the entrance of the school. Took the water off towards the arroyo again. Look at all that water. That is spreading out onto a big lawn, slowing down, dropping its sediment, and entering the street much more calmly and with zero sediment. Walking back up after the storm is calming. Okay. So a lot of things happened. A whole bunch of things happened. One, we got the flood of record 2 weeks after construction when there was no vegetation. Next slide, please. 2, we directed an arroyo which would have darn sure gone down another driveway to the street to a big lawn instead of going down a steep dirt road. Next slide. Next slide. 3, sediment from the playground went into the sediment trap and it didn't put mud on the brand new gravel. You're always going to, how about after the flood of record, if you have to go back and spend a couple hours digging out the sediment with a wheelbarrow. But after the flood of record, you could still drive a Prius up that driveway. After the flood of record, okay? You're always going to have some maintenance. But look at The parking spaces, the driveways, it's all intact. Next. What would have happened had we not done the project is that, see, this is a loop, this is an entrance, and this is an exit through the trees. I think you can see that. What would have happened is all of that stormwater from the arroyo plus the school would have gone down this steep section and jumped the curb and accessed the interior of that neighborhood block and flooded out of several houses. Next. I can press the button. So look at this driveway. See, there's a driveway cut. This is a very low thing. Water would have flooded out this whole person's yard. That event had never happened before. They don't even know that our work saved them from major flood damage. Instead, we turned the water across a very level grassy area. It re-entered the street much calmer with zero sediment, and it went down around the corner, and it went to another one of my water harvesting projects, the Silva Creek Botanical Gardens, which was later adopted by the Native Plant Society. And there's a huge botanical garden there now. It gets irrigated for free. Okay. Who knows what a head cut is? You better know. This is a very important thing to know about. There's a lot of them, and it's an important degradational process that we can fix. So Niagara Falls is a head cut. If you're walking down an arroyo and there's a drop off, that's a head cut. What happens is water goes this way, sediment goes this way, but that drop off goes that way. It advances headward up the arroyo. Here's another concept of it. You're walking down the arroyo and there's a drop off. The water goes that way. It speeds up. It removes material from here. It goes downstream. And that shape moves this way. The shape moves this way, but the water and the sediment go that way. So let's see. I was doing some channel work on a project, and I diverted base flow into a temporary channel. What was this? No, I re-wet an old channel and constructed some features and noticed that as soon as we put the water into that channel, it was making a head cut. And so here's some screen captures from a video. As you can see, the water's coming towards us. The sediment's coming towards us. Look at some chunks. See that one chunk? What's going to happen to that chunk? It's getting undermined by flowing water. Oops. That chunk is going downstream. Can everybody see that? So that chunk is going downstream. This chunk is going to get undermined. It's going to go downstream. The drop off moves upstream. The water and the sediment go downstream. You need to understand this. Here's another cartoon of it. This is like an intact wet meadow situation, a flat, well-grassed sheet flow valley bottom. It could have been giant Saccatone. It could have been sedges at high elevation. And what if there's a road or a cattle trail right down the middle? Then what happens is a head cut advances headward, and now you have a gully. This is an important resource damage point because it's completely altered the way water flows in the landscape. There's 10,000 miles of this in New Mexico. I'm not kidding. What happens? Now the runoff rapidly drains away. The top of bank is too high above the water flow to even be sub-irrigated, that the plant ecology changes. It doesn't support water-loving plants anymore. It all starts to dry out and unravel, and then head cuts come this way, and all of this starts to drop off as I love that slide you had. So we lost the storage capacity in the sponge, and we lost groundwater recharge capability. The one reason all the springs are drying up is because we changed every single water course in our bioregion. We lost groundwater recharge capability. Okay, so supposing there's a little old head cut somewhere. You start with an ungullied valley, and if you remove all the vegetation with cattle grazing or plowing, and if you have roads or trails that run up the valley bottom, you will start some little head cuts, some little ruts in the road. Maybe there's one here and one there. The dirt that comes out of here might pile up here. But what happens, see, the head cut, the water and sediment go this way, but the head cut goes this way. What if that head cut catches up to that head cut? Then they join. And then you will end up having head cuts within head cuts. They generally come in threes, believe it or not. Pretty soon, you have a 6-foot gully in a valley bottom that used to have sheet flow. Completely changes the world, changes plant habitat, downstream flooding. Okay, golly, what a problem. Shopping carts, Chevys, old barbed wire, dead cows. It's not going to stop the gully erosion because the water is going to speed up, get around and under that thing, and the head cut's still going to advance. And also, nothing's going to grow there. In order to heal the system, we need to restore the natural process of vegetation. If you don't have robust vegetation, what you have is a dead system of H2O molecules and rock particles. You know, there's flow tracks on Mars, okay? We don't want to be like Mars. What we need to do is cleverly figure out a way that we can get vegetation to fix the problem for us. This is Ruidoso High School, where Mike and I did a project, okay? Concrete chunks, look at that. They threw in rocks, and the erosion's getting around because what they did not do is properly manage shear stress. Cattle grazing, roads and other diversions. This is the Rio, This is Lahencia Creek. It's Lahencia Creek, east of Socorro. This used to be connected with that. All of this is brand new. All that, those gullies started the day after they put Geronimo on a train. And Texas cow herders had their way. And it created a giant mess. The dark band at the top of that 60-foot cut bank is where the wetland was. There's Robin looking at it. She's all going like that. What's that?
It's a head cut. Yeah.
It's a head cut. What's going to happen to it if we do nothing?
It's gonna keep going.
That's right. So the One Rock Dam, if you put a One Rock Dam below a head cut, instead of the head cut being a drop off, see, Erosion Control 101 is to armor the face of the head cut with rock. But that doesn't do any water harvesting. It patches the problem in place and might slow down the inevitable. If you put a One Rock Dam a little bit downstream from the head cut, instead of having a drop off and the water goes away, your little One Rock Dam will turn the head cut into a water harvesting basin, and water will soak into the ground all around. You will have habitat for vegetation, and the vegetation will fix your head cut. And the vegetation is living, self-repairing riprap that costs zero money. This is Robinson Tank area in the Lordsburg Playa. There's just a One Rock Dam stopping a head cut, and those are poppies and other things that might get identified. This is a Media Luna. It's a curved One Rock Dam that initiates vegetative response in a shallow arroyo, and it spreads out the water. This is a Zuni bowl built at a Buddhist retreat near Truchas, New Mexico, to stop
That's where Doso High School again, upstream. But I could be wrong.
No, it looks like that one, but I know because I was with the Roshi and the Buddhist monks built this thing.
Oh, cool.
Okay, that's a Zuni bowl. See, I did armor the face of the head cut with boulders, but then there's a drop off and it comes back up again, and so it has a relatively elevated water surface so that the water pressure can force water down and out, and so it can wick back up, because what we need to do is keep the vegetation in the vicinity of the drop-off robust. And so that's later in the dry season, and you can see that grass and sediment are colonizing the site. It's a done deal. This thing's fixed. Okay, this is in Aravaipa on the Nature Conservancy Cobra Ranch. This is on the backside of Safford from here. This is Sky Island Alliance, worked with Mexicans from Instituto Tecnológico de Cananea, and we had students and professors come from Mexico, and in bad Spanish, I got them building a Zuni bowl. My Spanish is horrible, but you're going to know what I'm talking about.
My Spanish is worse.
So they're building a Zuni bowl. There it is. See, a Zuni bowl simultaneously armors the face of the drop-off, but has a water harvesting feature and then another drop off. This creates an energy dissipating plunge pool, which is a common theme in our work. So it split the drop off into two shorter, gentler drop offs and created a pool of water. This is actually, the water's deep right there, okay? And so during the initial start of a flash flood, first thing is that fills up with water that stays full during the entire runoff event, and when it stops flowing, it is full. And so it maximizes the amount of water that soaks into the ground in the vicinity of this site so that the area around will become sub-irrigated and vegetation will grow.
And why did you do any water harvesting like you did on Vicente Creek on the sides? Is it because?
Because in this instance, if I direct water to the side, if it overflows, it will go down a steep bank. I had to cause all of the water to go into the central zone that I was going to protect with rocks. If I had, we could have diverted water off here, but you need to manage that overflow. And I was worried if it comes back around, then it could just move the head cut over and the head cut could unzip and go around my work. That's a common failure mode. If I would have had heavy equipment and could have moved more earth, we could have done something else. You keep asking those questions, man. Yeah. Yeah. Merry Christmas for asking the best questions. Yeah. Okay, this, like, we built something and people go, well, what do you call that? Hell, I don't know what you call it.
Something that works.
So this is a rock media luna, a rock rundown into the head cut. That was built by hand, dug out with the backhoe and put some rocks. And when you dig out with the backhoe, if you've got sod, tuck the sod here and there. You know, it's life. You can't do that in the Chihuahuan desert unless you're on a perennial stream. But if you have actual sod that you can take with a bucket and transplant, you can walk away because it's already growing. So this is October 13th, 2007. This is near Angel Fire. I did a road drainage project with Steve Carson. Spring 2008. So you can see that the water coming down spread out, and this was a different scenario from your question because I had vegetation, okay? And so water returning to the sides of the channel spread out. I could reduce shear stress below the erosional threshold. And this is a Zuni bowl made with boulders and some sod. So this whole area now is getting hydrated. And so the plants are just going to move in. That's not going to be head cut anymore. Vegetation is fixing it. It's cheating to work where you got water in the creek. Okay, those people have it too easy. We have the real problem down here. This is outside of Silver City on the Red Rock Road. There was a, this is the roots of a dying cottonwood tree because a head cut had run up this system. So Me and Skippy had this Kubota 080 and a loader and some long tow straps. He went up a steep hill slope and chained boulders, and I yanked him off the hillside with the excavator. One of them landed 1 foot from the excavator. I think it was that one. And so anyway, I built a really tall check dam to stop that erosion. And that cottonwood tree, which was dying, now is doing great. Okay. I'm going to completely change topics to roads and management of surface flow on roads. This is all going to be dirt roads. It's the same thing, okay? I've done a lot of drainage of dirt roads because it's way cheaper, easier, and there's less permitting process, and there's a huge need. And dirt roads are an important resource damage point in the watershed if you don't manage the surface runoff. So here's a natural area that now has new county roads and new driveways to 3-acre ranchettes. Every driveway is a new water course. Look at what happens to the drainage density. Instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, instead of having a small handful of water courses, every single driveway plus the county road is a new water course that is drying out the landscape, accelerating, getting water down off the mountain. Soil compaction decreases infiltration. Increased runoff from impervious surfaces goes down the street or road. Look at that. It's meandering. It's going to meander. If you dance with her. Don't go against the grain. Figure out what's going to happen and move with that, work with that. This is on the way to one of my projects. This county road is trapping water on the road bed all the way to there and blowing out that arroyo. The lead out ditch goes to the upslope side. Water doesn't go uphill very good. All the hard rain that lands on this side, instead of irrigating that grass, is blowing out the arroyo. Roads are calamitous for the watershed unless they're properly drained. There's 10,000 miles of gullies caused by roads. And I'll show you a better example. That's the historic valley bottom. But see, it was a very, very subtle swale. And if you drive down valley, cross the swale at a scissors angle and keep going down, and if you drive it on rainy days, eventually the road ruts will trap the stream and get it going down the road instead of where it used to go. If you want to cross a stream, cross it at right angles and do not turn until you're above the flood-prone area. That's the ground view of that. That fence post was dug into hard ground in 1935. I know the crotchety old rancher. Okay, so red arrow, bad. This is a transect. This is a stream channel cross section in which I'm trying to demonstrate this bank is higher than that bank. There used to be a surface here that tilted that way. This is the original water course. That's an anthropogenic hillside gully caused by an old wagon road. There's a whole bunch of them. They're really easy to spot. This is the big ditch in Silver City. My hometown had horrible, horrible erosion because town was at the bottom of a hill. Before there was gasoline, wood was fuel, there was cattle, pigs, sheep, goats, wagon roads. Everybody lived in the hill and went downtown. The entire watershed was overgrazed and overcut, and there's all these roads and trails. Then finally the rains came, and the big ditch cut 55 feet to bedrock. So there's my mentor, Bill Zedike. He's going to be 90. We can't fix the creeks until we fix the roads. All of our roads are creating such a flow concentration onto all of our creeks. And the creeks are responding to what we did. They are enlarging to accommodate the additional water we have given them. If we reduce the amount of water we give them, they will shrink and rebuild themselves automatically. So this book is a free download on my website. There's Bill looking at a dirt road, trying to figure out where we can drain it. I'm just going to jump through this. There's various road profiles. So what if the road is a little bit incised into the landform? Any water gets onto the road, it's going to stay on the road. A couple hundred feet later, the road is going to have head cuts and ruts in it. It's getting worse and worse and worse. What we need to do is go off to the side, dig a hole, and put that material in the road so that your road, which is going downhill, goes uphill for 50 feet. Water doesn't go uphill. Water doesn't go uphill. You can drive your vehicle uphill. Problem solved. They need to be appropriately configured for the vehicles that are going to go driving on them. There's spacing based on slope and soil type. Okay, so remember that air photo of all those driveways in the new county road? That was built up into like a ranchettes neighborhood, and I did two people's driveways. Notice how the driveway built by the contractor cuts through a ridge. And what it does is it's transferring water from this subwatershed to that subwatershed, cutting through the ridge and going down a steep hill. A contractor offered to re-gravel their driveway. That's a better business model than my business model because their driveway would need to be re-graveled every year. I went in there, fixed it, and it's stayed fixed because we got the water. That's a rolling dip road drain. We dug a hole off to the side, put it here. The road goes uphill. The water goes downhill into a water harvesting basin and then sheet flows down the hillside in its originating subwatershed. If you transfer water from one subwatershed to another, you're desiccating Peter and you're flooding Paul. The neighbors wanted it. I've never had to go back again. We re-gravelled the humps. You can drive it at speed. Okay, this was for Cochise County, Arizona. Bill Zedek and Steve Carson put on a roads workshop for their county grading crew. He's done, how many for this county?
He's done one, Steve Carson has done one or two workshops and he's coming back in the spring to do another workshop for Dunn County.
Try to go.
It is really time well spent.
Yeah, he taught me how to operate heavy equipment 20 years ago. I hired him. I had funding to teach a road workshop in Silver City, and then I found out he was teaching one for Mike and Rincon. I went to that workshop. I came back to the office and I said, I'm not teaching the workshop. I'm going to pay Steve Carson to teach it, even if I have to pay him out of my own pocket. Guy is so good.
It sounds good. I'll just say this about Steve Carson's workshop too. Even if you're not a heavy equipment operator, even if you're not even remotely involved in mending roads, you should, if you're in this room, you will benefit from Steve Carson's workshop, because the next time that an opportunity comes up to address a road drainage, a drainage situation, you'll have the answer, and you'll be able to spread that information to somebody who can make a change. The people in this room need to see Steve Carson's work and see what he does, because it's actually, I mean, Van's going to do a really good job talking about it, but it until you really see it go on the ground, you go, whoa. Because I'm kind of upstate, I'm taking your time here, Van, sorry, but you can see a lead out ditch in that picture there. There's lead out ditches on every county road, and after you take a Steve Carson workshop, you're going to go, well, why'd they put the lead out ditch there? That doesn't go anywhere. That's no good. And they should have done it this way, and you'll have that answer. It's really good information to have.
Yeah, the county graders in the West are like automatons in lockstep, marching in the wrong direction. A county road grader has more authority on water management than anybody in the county. And we should invest in them with this type of training so that they will be repairing our watersheds as they keep our roads passable. And it will reduce maintenance and increase safety for drivers at the same time as healing our watersheds and reducing downstream flooding. I didn't know this until I'd been doing watershed restoration for a couple of years. We all drive on roads. When you're driving on a road, pay attention to how that road is altering surface water. Every single road is a giant bummer for your watershed unless it's properly drained, and few are. This particular graded road was 18 inches deeper than the gently sloping rangeland. Water coming down slope gets on the road and stays on the road, eroding the road deeper. So what they did is they turned it into a rolling dip and graded it back up. I love to bring the road right back up to the original surface of the land in a few places. It looks very aesthetically pleasing to me. It makes the road look way less obtrusive. And that goes from 18 inches deep to the original surface of the land, and that's a water harvesting basin. Is that me?
No, it's me, sorry.
That's one demerit, but you got
I already own the book.
250 points from your presentation. Okay, here's another situation. If you're driving in the country and you're going up a steep, rocky section of the road, it's only because the slightly less steep part above is putting water on the steep part, and it's eroding the fines away, leaving the rocks behind. So you can see hill slope runoff is getting trapped on that curve, and it's going down the steep part. You had to be in four-wheel drive and go slow to get up this hill. So this is Steve Carson at 12:08:24, digging a water harvesting basin, putting that dirt on the road. And by 12:30, they're seeding the water harvesting basin. It doesn't take very long. This place has probably never had to have any more maintenance. This was done like 15 years ago. And now the hill slope runoff goes into a water harvesting basin and goes down the hill, but not where you drive. If water goes down a hillside, it irrigates grass. But grass is never going to grow on the road. You got to get the water off the road and have it go down a gentle slope someplace else. This is really fun to design because you look for opportunities to drain the road. And it's like making a sculpture. So this is my work. I built a rolling dip road drain and killed every living thing to build that basin and put that dirt on the road. That's the greenest place around. So I call this a zero footprint project. Angel Fire, New Mexico. You can see rolling dip, rolling dip, rolling dip, rolling dip, rolling drip, dip. That road used to be a giant watershed desiccating drain and a bummer to drive on. Now you can roll at speed going on these gradual humps, and the water keeps going across the road to where it used to go before there was a road. We are making the road transparent to the watershed. Rodeo, New Mexico, that's just the water harvesting basin associated with an adjacent rolling dip road drain. Okay. Sedona, Arizona.
Yeah.
We were there for 5 weeks. We drained 5 miles of Schnebley Hill Road, which is the most heavily visited place for these Jeep tours. And the road was a horrible mess. It was a contract with National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. We worked with the Forest Service. We had to argue with the engineers about this and that. There had been a meeting with 2 contractors previously. They had a $250,000 budget, and the engineers laughed at the ladies who had the funding and said, well, we're only going to build one giant concrete thing. Me, Mike, Matthew, Theo, Jeff, there's 5 of us with 5 machines for 5 weeks. We built 63 drainage features with that budget. And there's photo points. So what's happening is the graded road was too flat. Water wasn't going into the culvert. It was going off the edge instead. So we put in a bunch of new culverts, reshaped the road. You can tell by these tiny flow tracks that the road is now in-slope, so the water is forced to go through the culvert and under the road instead of off the steep bank. Okay, here's another one. The road was graded too flat. And when people drive on the road that's too flat in the rain, they cause ruts. This much material was removed from the road, so much that the culvert was exposed. And I've got a photograph of water going down the road and going in that hole. The culvert was working even though they tried to mess it up. So I think we just patched that culvert, reshaped. See, this is a rolling dip road drain. We're coming down the hill, but go up. But the water goes to the inside side, gets in the culvert, and goes under the road. So we combined culverts and a rolling dip road drain. The Jeep tour companies loved it. Mike brought his water tank. We planted a bunch of native plants. We built beautiful features along the way for 5 miles.
I did need to get new suspension after that job, though.
So here's a gully. Here's a clever way to do a gully plug. So that gully was caused by an old wagon road going to the ranch house from the hills. And I plugged it. I plugged the gully and dug a basin here because that's the original valley bottom. That's where the water course was, but the road veered off to the side, trapped the water, and made a horrendous gully. And so here's a cartoon of how that would work. It fills that basin and sheet flows to the historic valley bottom. Okay. Ruidoso. Why does Ruidoso keep flooding? Because the forest was clear cut, overgrazed, and upstream from town. They've bulldozed that creek mercilessly, straightened it, and levied it. Fire suppression caused fuel wood buildup and catastrophic stand replacement fires. A combination of doing the stupidest things imaginable for decades and decades, and they're still doing it. Here's an example of why Ruidoso floods. Not very much water is going in this culvert in a roadside ditch to a giant ugly concrete thing that really looks stupid. Okay? Dumping the water directly into the river. You never want to dump water and sediment and pollution directly into the river. This is exactly wrong. This was engineered and it was built according to plans within 1/100th of a foot. Exactly wrong. Why not have a rolling dip road drain and direct that water to irrigate the farm field? Challenge the conventional wisdom. I didn't make this up. I glommed onto this idea. It's really fun to do. it's really fun to transform a problem into a solution. It's really fun to build something creative and beautiful and to go back and watch it when water is flowing and to go back again and again and to see it getting better and better all by itself because of something you did, and you can learn along the way. That's it.
So I have a question.
I'm glad you do, Rhonda.
So why doesn't Ruidoso listen to, I mean, I don't know if you made an attempt to go, talk to them, but it's horrible. I was up there a couple weekends ago and it's awful the damage that's been done to property. Why aren't they listening to you? Why aren't they listening to somebody that says, okay, let's stop what you've done in the past and let's do this now? What's going on?
I mean, I'm a dirty-footed hippie. These ideas don't resonate. Conventional wisdom, if you will. But I'll tell you what, in 2008, me and Steve Carson built some boulder weirs in Two Rivers Park. And the next year was a giant flood, and several house trailers floated over our weirs. We went back, our weirs were still there. What happens is poor land management, cattle grazing, timber harvest, fire suppression, water diversions. It's all a perfect storm. Roadside ditches, the policy of once water is on the right-of-way, to keep it on the right-of-way until you need to build a giant ugly concrete thing, dumping it straight into the river with hot, polluted dog shit water. You know what I mean? We're automatons marching over the cliff. Somebody needs to think and stop. We need to challenge what's being done and fight with the people who want to keep doing it. People are getting rich. Todd, and what's his name? It's the new guy. Matthew Bloomer from Wagner told me they're renting a hell of a lot of equipment in Ruidoso to do the cleanup. See, the flood does not create an emergency. What creates the emergency is when a bunch of rednecks get out there with heavy equipment to clean up. Because what they don't understand, the river is the carpenter of its own edifice. The river knows what it's doing. If the river parked a boulder here and muck there, you should leave it. You should leave it there and pay attention to what the river's doing. If somebody gets flooded out, then they should get bought out and relocated to higher ground. It's cheaper. It's better, faster, easier, cheaper. We live in the desert. This is our water system, okay? We're destroying an extremely valuable resource, and we keep putting our stuff in harm's way, and we claim it's a natural disaster when we get flooded. It's a man-made disaster because we caused the flow concentration and parked infrastructure or where it was darn sure going to get flooded. And what do? We put it back again, and then we straighten and levee the river which is going to darn sure make it do a worse thing the next time. I don't know how to answer your question. How do we stop it? You guys are going to help us stop it, maybe, if we can.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, so what keeps you from going and meeting somebody in Rios? Talking to them.
I'm a contractor. I can't show up at somebody's house and dope slap them and tell them what they're doing wrong. I need to wait for my phone to ring. Somebody has to want to know and hire me and trust me, and then I'll try to help. But I have no agency. You know, I'm not in charge. I'm not in charge of anything except my small office.
Gotcha.
And you can't, like, so even saying, oh, they shouldn't rebuild, if I went up to you and said, you're now in a floodplain, you need to abandon your house and I'm only gonna pay you this much, would you be very happy?
No.
Would you? And so, like, you know, instead of even saying, oh, it's Ruidoso, it's Ruidoso in the sense that everyone that lives there has to buy in to what the solution is. So
Sure.
And on a positive note,
Ruidoso
I've had a
just-
lot of negative.
Yeah.
Ashley and I were at a public meeting last night in Ruidoso. The
Wow.
Village of Ruidoso submitted an application to NMED before the McBride fire. So what was it, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah.
McBride was 21. So before this series of fires and floods, to write a watershed-based plan for the area. After the big fires 2 years ago, they requested to increase the size of the watershed-based plan to cover 5 HUC 12s instead of the original 2 HUC 12s. And at the public meeting last night, you know, even though this is a village where everybody's been seriously impacted, houses burned or flooded or businesses or whatever, you know, for the most part, people were really willing to talk about what can we do differently so that in 20 years, so that our kids and our grandkids have a functional watershed and a river that everybody enjoys. It just takes so long for people to learn a new way to look at it. Yeah. But last night was really inspiring.
That is great to hear. And I forgot you are Ruidoso, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not talking smack about Ruidoso.
No.
I could not believe what I saw when I was up there. I mean, you can say it and see it on TV, but when you actually see it, it's hurtful.
So back in about 2016 and a couple years after the creation of the Water Resource Department in the village took hold. And that department was created to look at the watershed impacts, to look at environmental impact. How can they repair the watershed? They hired, they have on-call watershed engineers. And so they are taking a stand of trying to repair the watershed. It's not that they don't care, they do care. And they're trying to restore and restore wetlands. They're looking at restoring the river. How can they put in nature-based solutions into the river to kind of help flow and help mitigate the floods? And so they are not going in and just putting it in concrete and calling it good. It's not.
That's good.
They're looking at everything. They're looking at all the best case or all the scenarios and what would be best for the residents.
I got you.
Because
That's really good. That's positive.
one way to look at it is like, we've got 125, 150 years, like you have a long history of development. And so you can't flip it back to what it was before. So it takes a lot of time, you know, to create buy-in and to talk to people, and it's done one cup of coffee at a time with people talking amongst themselves. And like Ruidoso, it wasn't just the fires 2 years ago, which was salt. And there's so many fires that run together. Like it was the McBride, and then it was the Little Bear in 2010. Like, and so it's just
progressively gotten worse.
Kind of pointing back to Van's presentation, if Ashley and I went up to Upper Canyon where there was really serious destruction of most of the houses burned and then it flooded. And if you just look at the river, like try to ignore that was somebody's home and that was somebody's home and that was somebody's home because there's a chimney still standing. If you just look at the river, it's putting meanders back in itself. It's doing what the river wants to do.
I always say water will always win. Water will always win. So that's what we need to listen to. That's what we kind of need to, take these subject matter experts and us as government representatives, right? That have the opportunity to apply for grants, have an opportunity to even know about them, to represent, right? And that's what we really need to do. Because I've known, Van, I've known Van for years, I've known Mike even double, and nothing's changed. They haven't come in here and done a curb cut. They haven't come in here and talked to any of our, public works or our people that are reviewing plans and improving them, because they haven't got that shoe in yet. There's not that knowledge of, hey, that what you did is like really interesting. Let's talk about that. And I think if we show more, I don't know, what do I want to say? If we can represent them a little bit harder and be a positive representative of them, then we may get a shoe in to have our people that aren't listening that do make the decisions. Because ultimately, if the person that's making the decision wants this, it's going to happen, and we all know that, or it's going to move towards that, right? And so I think the decision makers is who we need to really let them know about this. I'm on a soapbox, right?
well, and that's the idea of like innovative planning and innovative permitting, instead of us staying in our silo or our wheelhouse, because this is how we've always done it. Sort of thinking outside the box and going, we can still stay within regs, ordinances, statutes. Like, what if we put in our permits, hey, you have to consider native seed mixes, or even if we put in guidance documents, like the permitting side of surface water is looking, because we're developing a new permitting program. There's a lot that happens on the scale of BMPs. It's not you have to do this in the regs. It's more of a thought of like, well, we should be doing this. And so sometimes while you can't legislate it or necessarily put it in your ordinance or your permit, you can have a guidance of these are suggested BMPs. So like in development, like, oh, when you go put in this housing development, most cities in the state now have ordinances to like keep your stormwater on site and all the stormwater detention ponds. And it can become as simple as, oh, consider curb cuts. Like Albuquerque now just passed a city council. Curb cuts are part of the development. No one knows quite how we're gonna do it yet. But this is a red arrow here.
Las Cruces did the same thing. We had a design standard manual that was updated and recently, where before that was the law of the land. Now we have a design standard in conjunction with a technical manual, where the technical manual doesn't have to go through the same rigorous council approval of changes or amendments, where the engineers can say, hey, or the public can say, hey, why are you allowing this? Can this be put in the technical manual? And so that can be revised a lot easier, instead of just saying, well, city doesn't allow it, screw it, we're just gonna do what we can do. And that's what these technical and guidance manuals allow. I think Tucson was first doing that kind of thing for green infrastructure. So we're baby steps, we're barely moving along, but at least we're opening up the door where it's not just closed with just one standard and that's it.
And like, that's huge, because if someone because it almost, to me, a lot of it is like, what I said, like it's over a coffee cup. Because I just know as a regulator, when I go in and say this, people are telling me what to do. But if someone like walks by and go, oh, that's a curb cut, and that looks great. And so it's like, you know, sort of that web of ideas.
Yeah, and I think the public, educating the public, getting these guys in here, you know, every 6 months and getting huge, you know, rooms that, you know, capacity of 250, and just let them explain. You know, maybe not so in depth like Van just did, but you know, we get it because you know, we have that mindset. But you know, a little bit on a lighter note, you can't say hot dog shit, you know. But anyway, I think that is so important. You know, that educating the public is work for me. I mean, it's a work in progress, of course, but you know, jumping on that as being our source of educating about water conservation has worked for us. It's improved, you know, our water use and our conservation. You know, but it's not a one and done either. We have to just continue doing that. And I think if we kind of support it and get some momentum going, that we, you know, maybe they come, maybe we talk about it, maybe we show the recording or something like that. I just would like these ideas to move, you know, at least if you're looking at them as best practices, at least you're looking at them, right? At least they're being included in the document. I think that's really where we'd like to be.
I'd like to say something based on what you said, what you observed when you looked at the river.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a giant epic flood, that's a big deal. It's not a big deal for the river that's been there for millions of years. It's had thousands of floods that big. All the river's doing is catching up on a little bit of deferred maintenance. We might not understand this because of our short attention span and our scattered energies, okay? The river is undoing the stupid stuff we did to it so it can work right. That's one thing. And another thing, the engineers have an on-call. You have to study a lot to be an engineer. You have to know about materials, strengths, stresses and strains. There's a huge curriculum. It's extremely difficult to become a professional engineer.
Yeah, these engineers that they have on call they're studied in watershed. They don't do like your civil engineers, I should say. These are engineers who they studied the watershed health. They
More like
know
environmental.
Yeah, you're more of your environmental kind of doing the nature-based engineering. And looking at it.
I'm still very skeptical about that because, I mean, almost everything engineers study is dead. Concrete, steel, beams, mechanisms, gears, all that stuff. And in my opinion, unless they have gone through the Roskin stream channel. Great. Well, this is so rare and precious. Okay.
They're your peers.
That's awesome. But that's not what usually happens. Usually the engineers will impose upon a natural system something that's dead. And it's not going to work. That's the normal way of doing things. I hope, who is it?
They have several new on-call. In the past, it was Riverbend Engineering. He ended up retiring. They
No,
have
it's not.
That was
It's
Chris.
Natural
Channels,
Channels
yeah.
design.
Yeah.
Cobb Finley, and they have one more.
What's that guy's name? Yeah. The first two you mentioned are highly reputable, and so you're in good shape. But in my opinion, unless the people designing this work understand the way rivers really work and understand natural process guided by native vegetation, okay, and unless the people building it understand this, and unless there is continuity and follow through the entire step of the way by someone who understands all of this, starting with the assessment, the design, construction, monitoring, maintenance, and reporting, unless that's done by one person, if one company does the design and you go out to bid and another company builds it, too much information is going to get lost. It's, everything's fragmented. I know that through purchasing, we're trying to avoid mishandling of funds, but we end up mishandling the river. There has to be some clever way to integrate this.
It's a step in the right direction.
I agree with you. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No.
I was gonna tell you that we had a project that, I'm sorry, I forgot the Tucson-based, what is it called?
Watershed management.
Yeah, watershed management came in, we paid them, they did the design, we were, I'm talking about Nevada Street, Peter. What a mess that ended up being because, Public Works, and I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, if my Public Works was in here, I would still say this. Public Works took a hold of it, but they don't have what the company was, imposing on a piece of paper. And like always, what's on paper is not always what's in the field or intended to be in the field. So if you're not practicing, best management practices when you're looking at these types of projects, you're not going to build it to plan. You're not going to build it the way that it's supposed to work. And it was not built the way it was supposed to work. With the exception of chicanes that slowed down the traffic, that's all it was. But the plant material, the water catchment basins, nothing was built like it was supposed to. And it was kind of a waste. Like, what a waste of monies, what a waste of opportunity. That was just really too bad.
It's really interesting you bring that up because the extra time we had yesterday, we did that yesterday, actually took them on to go see the project.
Did you?
As an example of what this can look like, it's not implemented appropriately. And
Thank you, Mark.
and
Thank you.
I'm primarily, like active transportation, that's really my expertise more.
Sure.
And even from that perspective, it's a traffic calming measure, I actually
Well, and the only reason I say that is because there's these big like curves right almost in the middle of the street, so
it's
of
definitely
course
a
it's
learning
gonna slow traffic down,
experience.
but yeah, I'm so glad. Like here's somebody that's not even like in the, I don't know, in the environmental realm of your day-to-day duties, right?
Mm.
And you know that was not a good project. And so that doesn't make any sense for us to have a great idea about these projects and then have somebody else come in and construct them that doesn't get it. So I think educating them, like, where's the school of Van and Mike, right?
Well, I also recognize too that there's some pretty big challenges for guys like us when we're brought in to solve a water or an erosion problem. But really, what's going on is a traffic problem, or in the case of Sand Hill Arroyo that you saw yesterday, is a trespass problem, which the trespass problem exacerbates the erosion problem. And that's where you really have to get on board with talking to folks that know all about it, because I've seen, I see a lot of times, I'm kind of tuned into this, where the landscape ordinance goes into direct conflict with traffic safety, where there's this unyielding, well, not necessarily, unyielding isn't the right word, but a pretty rigorous standard for the number of trees and the placement of trees within a new development. And 2 years later, 3, 4 years later, you just can't see down that street because you're gonna get T-boned because the traffic situation wasn't considered. And that, there is no rule to that, and often we don't foresee a problem until we go, oh, there was a problem. And so in all of these cases, I think that we're dealing with an evolution of our understanding of rivers, or an evolution of our understanding of the way the urban system works. Davina, I forget your friend's name.
Ashley?
Ashley, thank you, sorry. Ashley mentioned, we've got 125, 150 years of building these cities, and we can't just change them overnight, as much as Van and I would like to. And so there's some real challenges ahead with all of these things working together. Genevieve, you're here, and I'm glad you're here. What Van was talking about with the Ruidoso thing, putting the water on the agricultural fields, this is exactly the kind of ideas that the drought resiliency effort is, that Connie spoke about yesterday. That's what we're looking for. The Rio Grande in this area has some huge problems because of so many competing, conflicting demands and needs. You've got transportation, railroad. You're just not going to get the railroad to budge.
Irrigation, you're not getting,
And you're not
EBID's not
going to,
moving.
EBID's not going to budge too well either. And so, there's a lot of big challenges. So the constraints are really strong. So we have a lot to figure out.
It's not even threading a needle, it's threading 5 needles in a row. They're all offset just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
And your
Yeah.
thread is wobbly and frayed.
Yes,
Right.
yes.